Hey, what's up everybody, it's Marcus. Please go to prophotoedits.com where you can download my Lightroom presets and Photoshop Actions set. And please sub to the channel because for every single one of these images I have a behind the scenes and how I got the shot and how I did the edit coming up this year. So stay tuned. Today we're going to be going from here to here using my Lightroom presets and Photoshop Actions. Let's get into it. So one thing you'll see me do a lot that I really like to do is when the sun's setting, just put it right behind the model's head, and you only have a few minutes before, because it can be too high, it can be too low, and I shoot with a long lens for these type of shots like 85, 105, 200 f2 once in a while, but not as much with that lens because the front element's so big it just flares out crazy. So this is with the 105, and as you can see the sun setting, this is just some through the lens footage. Just wait until it got to the right point and then trying to get a good portrait of her, and that's pretty much how this one went. This is a shoot where the sun was setting, and we were just running through and doing a bunch of shoots with a 35mm and a parachute dress in a field. These are all with my presets on, and as you can see, if I reset it, I had a good time doing this shoot. I was shooting a lot of wide stuff, you know, direct sunlight, kind of harsh, just because it was fun to do. I haven't really edited any of these yet. That was with the 85, 200 f2. So all that's going on right here is just in the sunset, and I shot it just a tad underexposed because I like to leave a little bit of room for dodge and burn, the editing and stuff like that. So first thing we did was I went into my preset pack and I chose, this was Sunset Warm Red. And I didn't have to do anything for this because this was just, you know, right the way I wanted. There's a lot of stuff going on in here, but there's over 70 different presets in my pack, so consider purchasing that. It's everything that I use for every single photo that you see in my portfolio. The only thing that you really need to change with these sometimes is, depending on how you shoot, is the exposure, to get your exposure, you know, where you want it. If you shoot a little even more underexposed than I do, you can just bump that up a bit, and your white balance, depending on how you shoot. So let's run this into Photoshop and let's finish this edit. Okay, I'm gonna try to make this video short and simple for you guys. A lot of times the very first part of these videos is just skin work and cleanup, and this is always gonna be the same. So if you know how to do this type of stuff, you can just skip ahead until we get to the color toning, the eyes, dodge and burn, and stuff like that. But the first thing I do is just click on your background layer, hit Command J, and it'll duplicate your layer for you. That way we're never going to touch the background. First thing I do when I start on skin and blemishes, let's just zoom in here to like 80%. I use the patch tool, and the correct way to use the patch tool for stuff like this is as follows. Grab a blemish, move it to an area that's a little bit brighter, drop, go up here to edit, fade patch selection, and bring that down to, I don't know, if it's an area that doesn't need a bunch of blending, just like 83 will work. There's a little bit of acne there. Sometimes you don't have to do the blend mode. Grab all the blemishes, move them to another area, and if, say that you grab something and it's creating sort of like a line around the outside of it, and you're not happy with it, only thing you have to do at that point is, as soon as you drop it, before it goes away, go up here and go to fade patch selection. It's under edit, and then decide on how much you want the edges to be faded. So the only thing that I'm going to keep doing right here is just grabbing these blemishes, making sure that they faded properly. Okay, a quick tip about fading these under eye areas. The easiest way to do this is with the patch tool before we start doing any of the real skin work. Grab this, move it to a lighter area. It may take a few tries. That looks good, and then you also need to go in here, fade patch selection. I'll bring this down to like 50%, maybe 54. Okay, that's way better starting point than if we just patch it and drag it. Okay, so I'm done with the patch tool. That took about, I don't know, 3.5 minutes. Now let's go in to do the removing the hair off the face. So I like to use the spot healing brush tool for this. Make your brush pretty small here, only as big as the hair, and then you can drag it and then stop every 2 or 3 inches. Drag it and stop, And always start at the end of the hair. There's a hair on the nose. When you hit an area like this where it's going to the corner of the nose, where there's a little bit of contrast, stop, and then we can restart on the hair once we go to the other side. So that's pretty much all we're going to do with this tool. If you don't know how to use it, this is how we use it. And sometimes you just have to make a creative decision about where you want to stop, what curl of hair you want to stop at and leave on the face. That's totally your call. You just want to make sure that it looks realistic. Okay, so we've removed the hair with the spot healing brush tool. Before, after, before, after. Okay, so now we're ready to start. So I'm gonna back out to about 30%. And what I'm gonna do is just PPE frequency separation. This is included in my pack. The radius, I usually start it at about 10 on a portrait like this. I'm gonna drop it down to 7. You just wanna see the eyes clearly, a little bit of a watercolor look. Maybe 8. Hit OK. Alright, open up this folder, frequency separation, PPE frequency separation. Go to lower frequency layer. Always make sure you're on this with the actual picture on it. We're gonna go and grab our lasso, and then we're gonna set this to whatever we chose as our radius. So we set it at 8. And I like to be very light with this type of stuff on edits like this, because the magic happens in a few seconds in a step that most people don't do. We're just gonna go to Gaussian blur, and then as always you pump it way up and you get this crazy insane look. You don't want to go crazy with this. I usually use this around like 5, and don't hit huge areas of the face all at once, because you want your portrait to look somewhat natural. I do this side of the face, 5, and then the trick here is nose, usually the closest thing to the camera. You want to go back in and choose about half of what you've been using on your radius for the Gaussian blur on the nose. And then I also hit any other skin areas, and we can go back up to around 4.6. Flatten this folder out, and then you can go toggle it on and off, and you just want to barely be able to notice a difference. Just a little bit of a softer portrait. There you go. And then sometimes I even drag that down to like 80. Alright, so let's get into where we really fix stuff up in my action here. Skin perfection, PPE. All you have to do is run that, hit OK. The instructions are going to pop up, and I'll walk you through it as well. Now always click on your mask here, this gray layer. This helper layer is just going to help you see the shadows that you normally can't see with your eyes. So if you click on this and bring the reds up just a bit, because every image is a different exposure, just so you can start to see where the gradients happen. Now make sure you go back onto this gray layer, and every time you're just going to choose a white brush, 70% opacity, 1% flow. That's your magic number. And then we're going to go into about 70% here, and you see how there's a bunch of different gradients going on right now. This is different from this, it's different from that, and the shadows around the corner of the mouth, under the eyes. It's just, the way people's skin looks. So we don't want to go into Barbie doll land like I say all the time, but we're going to fix it just a touch. So what you want to do is on the gradients where you see darker to lighter, you're just going to start to brush on those. So I'm going to speed this up for you guys. The only thing you need to do is draw with your white brush over the darker areas until they match the lighter areas a little bit better. And if you have any overexposed areas that you want to bring down, just toggle to your black brush and draw over the highlight areas, and then you have perfect looking skin. So let's back out and look at this. This is where we started before we started with the skin perfection. And as we drew those darker areas that the helper layer is helping us see away, that's how much fixing we did. In my estimation, that's the proper way to fix skin, because it keeps the detail there. It doesn't look like a a plastic doll. So we're just going to go down the list in the skin actions in the PPE skin actions folder. So dodging method 2. So what you want to do right here is just make your brush bigger to start out with. Do one pass, make it smaller with your bracket keys. Do another pass, make it smaller so the light builds up like it naturally would if the sun was shining on her face. And just follow where the highlights are. Don't worry about the eyes in this step, we'll do those next. The cheekbones normally pop out, so big pass, smallest pass. Draw on the lips a little bit just to pop them out just a little bit. The chin, and then we'll do the hair on the next one. Run this action again. And this time we're going to do the hair. So for the hair, I usually put it on a different layer so I can adjust the opacity of both. And what you want to do when you're drawing over the hair is draw over the highlights on the back of the hair where the sun's coming through in a portrait like this, and then just hit the highlights like right there where the sun is hitting it a little bit more. Don't draw over the entire body of hair, because it'll look fraudulent like that. You just want to pop where the light's already hitting just a bit, so it'll match how the face is popping just a touch. Okay, so let's work on the eyes a touch. PPE eye actions, and then you want to go down to eye sharper PPE. Run that. Okay, set opacity to 75%, flow to 100%. Make sure you're on your black mask layer, and with a white brush, 75% opacity, 100% flow. Now just draw over the eye, and I like to hit the eyelashes on top and bottom as well, and this will sharpen them up a touch, especially when they're it's a little bit soft. But a lot of cameras struggle in backlight. You see before, after, so it made them a little bit sharper for us. Now what we want to do is eyes and smile whiter. Obviously she's not really showing any teeth right here, but run that action. Make sure you're on your black mask and set your opacity to 100% opacity, 100% flow. White brush on your mask there, and draw where the whites of the eyes are. Now this is to be used with discretion, because you don't want the whites of the eyes to be. This is just going to remove a lot of the color cast in the eyes and on the teeth if she was showing them. And then you just mess with the opacity after the fact. So before, after. It took, color cast that's in her eyes, the whites of her eyes, out. Okay, eyeshadows, PPE. Run that. And this is what we're going to do now that we're adding a bunch of contrast to the eye. Underneath the eye, we're going to give a little bit more contrast back. Opacity to 25% for this one. Flow to 100. White brush, same thing. And on your mask tool, just draw one swipe, boom, under the eyes, boom, under the eyes, and now it brought a little bit of under eye contrast back, and then you can dial that down a little bit. Okay, so now we want to go to eye enhance PPE. First thing we do here before we get to the color, just click on your black mask there, and it's going to choose the dodge tool for you and set up all your shadows and exposure. So the only thing you have to do is draw. You just start bringing out the highlights in the eye, and remember, if the eye is catching light here, it will be exiting on this side, and you don't want to go crazy on this because it's backlit. If there was a lot of catch light in her eye, which I'll do in another photo here in a sec, well, on another video I should say, you just want to embellish that a touch, just a touch, because the next thing we're going to do, her eyes are brown, so we're going to go to brown eye enhance. I have these for blue, brown, and green, which is pretty much every color of eye that you can shoot. Run that action, same tool, you don't need to change anything. It's going to have it for you. And now, where we had that light coming in, we can embellish the brown in her eye just a touch. Eye sharper started here. This is our whole eye folder. Select them all, Command G will group them together, before and after the eyes. So now we have something that's connecting as far as the eyes are contrasty, punchy, sharp, and not overly done, they're not glowing. So what we're going to do right now is the fun part. We're going to tone it a little bit, sharpen it, and get out of here. So now what you want to do is go back up to the top of the Pro Photo Edits workflow, and then go down to PPE Color Pop. Run that action. Now it's just going to pop the colors out in your image a little bit, and then you decide how much is enough or how much you want or don't want in there. I bring that down to about 66% on this one. Contrast pop. This is going to pop the contrast out in your image, and again, before and after. I spent a lot of time getting this one just right. Shadow toning. This is where we tone the shadows. So run this action, and it's going to create a mask on here, only digging into the darker parts of the image. So it's going to create a folder for you. I put every color of the spectrum in here for you. Turn them all off, and then start to turn them on and see which one. For me, it's 99% of the time blue. Blue just adds that little bit of soft matte, and it's only digging into the shadow areas. I bring this down a touch because I don't want it to be too much of a matte. And here's a pro tip: if you double click on the color that you choose, if you were to go up here, it would give you more of a matte look. And if you go down to the blacks, because the shadows are black, so the more closer you get from the blue black to the dark blue, navy blue, every color, if you get closer to the bottom, they'll start to dig in more and more to the shadows and lose a little bit of the matte look. Now we go to the next one, complete image toning. Run that same thing. We're going to click every one of these color spectrums off, and 9 times out of 10 what I do here is I go with yellow. I double click on this and I bring it up and mess around with the color picker until I figure out where is something that matches this image. And we can turn it on, turn it off. It just adds a nice glow to the image. And then the opacity, I'll bring that down, I don't know, to 3. What we're going to do right now is go to stage sharpening, and this is going to sharpen the whole image up for you. Just hit continue and open it up, and you'll see it created 4 different masks of layers going from the brightest to the darkest. Don't adjust any of the opacities for those. Those are set just the way they should be. In 100%, and I'll show you. It sharpened it without making it crunchy. Off, on, off, on. Okay, so now we've got everything sharp, punchy. If you need to adjust the exposure anymore to make it brighter or whatever, just open a adjustment, a curves adjustment, and then what I like to do is grab the brighter side and just pull it over if I want it to have just a little bit more punch. And now I'm going to throw in something that's optional that I generally like to use just to give something a little bit more flavor from my Light Leak and overlay pack that's on my site. So Light Leak 4, I'm going to just drag that in, position it over here in the corner, drag it out until it covers the whole entire image. Go to the blending mode and then choose it to screen. Now what you want to do is click on the mask, this button right down here, and it'll put a mask over here. And then you're going to go over here to this, same with your paint bucket, it's the gradient tool. And make sure that you're clicked on this first one right here. This is the this one would be like the circle, and this one is just the side to side gradient. And if you draw, I kind of tend to bring it wide, but only have it touching where it realistically be touching, maybe the top of her nose. Before, after, and that's a bit much, of course. We don't want to go into fairy tale land there. Bring it down a bit. I'm happy with this. You guys have seen this on my Instagram and on my website as well. This is where we came in, this is where we left. This may have taken me 12 or 13 minutes if I wasn't talking. And you guys can do the same thing since you have the raw file. So I'll see you guys next time. In a couple days we'll do some more. All right, thanks, I appreciate it.